For too long, leadership has been associated with power, a position, title, authority. And ironically, these two are philosophical opposites. Power and authority is all about control. Leadership is about the subtle influence, alignment, and mobilization of energy within human systems. And let me unpack that so it's a little more tangible. You see, why it's so important to disconnect leadership from authority is, and let's be practical. Organizations need some sort of structure and clarity around reporting lines, around responsibilities, and there needs to be a certain amount of authority involved. So I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm just saying let's not confuse that with leadership, because it doesn't matter whether you have a position of authority or not. The choice to lead is yours. And so let's define leadership as the ability to align and mobilize energy in a human system. We all have energy, and that energy comes in different forms. Some people have a lot of energy for detail and identifying what could go wrong and mitigating risks. Some people have a lot of energy for creating structure and order. Some people have a lot of energy for injecting enthusiasm and optimism or connecting with people. What am I talking about really is what energizes you. And when you start to think about what energizes you, well, wherever you are most energized is where your most natural contribution lies. Now, we live in a world that is extremely complex, and it has become exponentially more complex over the past couple of years, and will continue to with the influence of technology and the breakdown of most, if not all, macro systems. And so we are living in probably one of the most turbulent and dynamic times and complex times in, I would say, probably close to recorded history. In simpler times, when things didn't move so fast and things weren't quite as complex, it was easy to connect leadership and authority and title together. The leader sat at the top, hierarchical, and decisions were deferred to the person who was in charge. The problem with that in today's world is that due to the complexity and dynamic nature of the world today, no one person has all the tools. No one person has all the answers, and therefore leadership needs to be disconnected from power, authority, and title, and allowed to move to where it is needed most in the system. With everyone bringing different contribution, if you want to be a leader and play the role of a leader, regardless of whether you have a position or a title, that's a different subject altogether. Then you need to learn to notice what's happening in the system, in the human system, whether that's a team, whether that's a relationship. And this sounds simple, and yet it's something in my experience that most leaders don't do. Most leaders, and I'm not talking about people with positions, most leaders are so busy running around and overwhelmed and exhausted that they don't have the clarity or the presence to notice what's actually happening in the system. And that noticing what's happening in the system is detecting things like, what's at play here? Who's bringing what contribution? And every time, whatever contribution you naturally bring, if you're a natural skeptic, then the contribution you bring is healthy skepticism. But that healthy skepticism introduces tension in the system. Because if there are other people in the team who are natural optimists, they may misread that skepticism as negativity, or a threat to their optimism, a threat to the energy. This is where leadership comes into play. It's the leader's job to notice what's at play. And to detect that tension, because when that tension shows up, if you are not present enough to notice not how it's showing up, but what's beneath the surface, what is each person bringing or trying to protect, and when you notice that, now the next step is you can name it. And this is where naming the tension transforms tension into information. Because if you don't name the tension, then what happens inevitably is that it gets personalized. So the optimist says to the skeptic, "You're being negative." And the skeptic says to the optimist, "You're being naive." And when this happens, there's no cooperation that will flow from this. So what happens is, instead of our energy collectively being aligned and channeled towards the outcomes we're wanting to achieve, that energy gets used to fight against each other, and the system doesn't move forward. So leadership is the ability, firstly, to notice what's happening in the system. What tension are we experiencing in the system? What's beneath the surface? And then to name it so as to transform tension into information and unlock choice. Now that we've named it, now we can align it. And that alignment is about looking at what's needed now and who brings what's needed. So you might call this situational awareness. It's stopping to say not what do I bring and what's comfortable for me, but rather what is needed now and who brings it and who's best positioned to bring it. And it's through this alignment that we then start to sequence and coordinate our energy towards moving the system forward. And when there's alignment, then we can move. And then the last part is, while we're moving, while we are executing, while we are getting things done, while we are doing what we need to do to move the system forward, it's critically important to regulate that rhythm. Because once we've aligned our energy, and that means that sometimes, based on what's needed in the situation, some people might need to step forward and take the lead. Some people might just need to step back and be led. And some people might need to step to the side and support. And this dance, if you will, this dynamic dance, is what we call finding our rhythm. And when we are in rhythm, we then want to make sure we maintain that rhythm. And to maintain that rhythm means you've got to have check-ins and regulate. How are we moving? What's changed? Are we moving too fast? Are we moving too slow? Are we pressurizing things too much? Those check-ins help to regulate the rhythm. And then the whole cycle feeds back into noticing again. And this dynamic cycle of notice what's happening in the system, notice the tension. Not just how it shows up, but what's beneath the surface. What are people bringing that's colliding with each other? What's the contribution? What's the energy they're bringing? What are they protecting? And when that can then be noticed, now we can name it, which makes it conscious, which means that we can transform tension into information, as opposed to it going unnamed and becoming conflict. and then aligning that energy so that our collective energy is helping to move us forward, move the system forward, rather than being used to fight against each other and create friction. And then the regulate. Once we're moving, how do we regulate that rhythm? By checking in to see, are we still in rhythm or are we out of rhythm? It's a bit like listening to music. You know, if you listen to the music and you get into the beat of the music and you're moving in time with the music, that's great. But then if you switch the music off and you carry on and you don't check in and see how are you doing with the song, you can quite easily lose the rhythm. And this is really what leadership is all about.